Okay, and we are back. So what happens after you file this PMN? If the EPA approves your PMN, they just don't do anything, right? They just let it happen, right? You're just giving them notice that you're going to manufacture it, and if the EPA doesn't tell you you can't manufacture it, you can go ahead and do that. Now, if the EPA finds an unreasonable risk by the manufacturer of this chemical, they may issue an order that lasts 45 days to allow the applier, the applicant, to appeal. They can file a proposed rule to delay the manufacturing of the chemicals, or they can contact you, and the company and the EPA can come up with a consent decree, right, where you are somehow restricting the production. There's a fast track consent decree, which is like just terms that are standard for many producers, that like kind of a one size fits all, or a standard one where you're negotiating the actual terms of these consent decrees. Okay, we talked about this a couple in the last video, the significant new use rule, or SNUR. So it's an existing chemical that's on the TSCA inventory, but we're using it for a significant new use. Okay, you have to file a PMN for a significant new use rule of an existing chemical. So they call that a significant new use notice. And you have to give the EPA 90 days before you are using an existing chemical for a new use. Okay, testing. Testing is a really important part of TSCA that every chemical company has to conduct testing before, to include in their PMN. Okay, this interagency testing committee supervises it, and they test these chemicals to see if there are issues, if it's carcinogenic, or the risk of birth defects or mutations, right? And if it is identified as something like that, they put that on the TSCA priority list, and they have to do more testing, right? The manufacturers must submit production and exposure data on chemicals on these ITC, these priority lists. So that's called the Preliminary Assessment Information Rule. Okay, record keeping, EPA keeps them. They can be used for other statutes, right? Like if you're looking for lists of chemicals under like RCRA or something like that, if there is any significant adverse reaction from exposure to a chemical, it has to be reported to the EPA, and employee reactions are kept for 30 years. Other ones are kept for 5 years. There are certain existing chemicals that the EPA determines that their very existence is an unreasonable risk to human health or the environment. Okay, and then they have to have specific rules for those ones, right? So one of them are the PCBs we were talking about, asbestos, right? We can't make asbestos anymore. The hexavalent chromium, if any of you guys have seen the Erin Brockovich movie, that was the chemical in there. This is a little article, talks about, we only restrict the use of these 9 chemicals out of like the 80,000 on the TSCA inventory. So, all right, here's our PCBs. They were banned in 1978, and they build up, and they don't, what did they call? Like die out. They're always there. Okay, these are the aerosols are gone now. Dioxin, so that's Agent Orange. Asbestos, which we know causes lung disease and cancer. That's the hexavalent chromium, which cause like birth defects and health issues with people who are exposed to it. Metalworking fluids. So they're banned or strictly limited. So only 9 of them. So kind of interesting. You would think that there would be more categories where they'd be totally banned. Yeah, so this is more about PCBs, one of those 9 banned chemicals. A lot of health risks there. Under TSCA, EPA can inspect the facilities. We talked about that under each of those categories. They can subpoena them, or they, can do surprise inspections. Usually what happens is EPA says they're going to give an inspection, and then the people say, okay, because nobody wants to say, I don't want you to inspect us, get me a warrant, or I have a constitutional right to whatever, or notice or something. You don't want to be that company, because then it looks like you have something to hide. So inspections are authorized under TSCA. For civil, the worse their behavior, the higher the fine. If it's a willful violation, obviously you have more severe penalties. The criminal liabilities, if there are knowing or willful violations, and citizen suits. Very similar. There wasn't another slide. They talk about, who knew and what did they know. That's kind of the higher the fine. There's also, and I want you guys to read this on your own on page 295. I know a lot of you guys are interested in careers for environmental paralegals, and there is a professional profile of Tracy Rose, who is an environmental paralegal for a company called Environ. So thought that'll be very interesting for you. The other assignments are completing those discussion board questions. I think there's only one more. There's the quiz. And then we have a presentation assignment coming up. And what I want you to do right now there is pick which statute you want to focus on for that presentation that we have covered or will cover this semester, and then put your name next to that statute so we can get ready for that. So that's it for this week, and reach out if you have questions, and I will chat with you next week.